What's up, y'all? Just got back from Jackson, Tennessee. Spent the day up at TopFlight Archery with Kenny. Sat down with him, interviewed him. We talked about, his arrow setups, what he does to build them, how he builds them, why they're so much better than, what you see out on the market today. We talked about how they marry up to the bow to give you max performance, as well as touching on some other topics like broadheads. So if you would like, subscribe, leave a comment below with any questions or thoughts. I appreciate it. Well, Kenny, I appreciate you sitting down with me today.
No problem.
Came out here, want to just talk to you a little bit about your arrow setups, what makes them different, what makes them more unique than your typical arrow. So let's just kind of jump right into it. I know you've built a reputation for making some of the most lethal arrows you live and die on. Your arrow should be passing through.
Absolutely.
So what about your arrow setups, how you build it, makes them better than, say, like picking up a set at Walmart?
Well, basically, what I've always tried to do is, number one, to ensure we have a pass-through shot. You got to keep the integrity of that arrow. It's got to be able to pass through that animal. So the first and foremost is the broadhead, and then from the broadhead, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But from the broadhead, you go into the arrow of making sure that arrow can absorb the energy that the bow's creating. So when you compare like a basic 70-29 bow, 70 pounds, 29-inch draw bow, most of those bows are going to be creating energy somewhere in the low to mid 70s up to the 80 foot-pounds of energy. Well, most arrows with stock components can't absorb that kind of energy. So what happens is that once that bow's fired and it hits that knock, then that arrow, that's where you start seeing that erratic vertical variance of those humps and valleys happening. And then the deeper and taller those humps and valleys are, the longer downrange that it's got to go to stabilize. The longer it goes, the more energy it's eating. So you're taking energy off the back end of what your effective distance could be, range could be. So when you look at an arrow, spine, balance, FOC, even down to the vane configuration, knot configuration, all of that matters on making sure that absorption rate is going to match that energy off the bow. So whenever we have an arrow that is under that can't absorb it, then those peaks and valleys, and it takes that energy away, then you're losing the integrity of that. Now, whether that happens at 20 yards, 30 yards, or 40 yards, or whatever distance it happens, could change the limit. So when you get down to the basics of it and you think, okay, well, we have a bow that's creating 75 foot-pounds of energy. We've got a 20, 30, 40-yard target, whether it's an animal or whatever, and I want to go through it. Well, let's say, for instance, a white-tailed deer, our most popular game hunted. Most white-tailed deer on a mature level, you're going to need at least 35 to 40 pounds of energy to get through that deer.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if we shoot and we're creating 75 and that arrow does not go through, then we lost it somewhere.
Yeah, something's wrong.
We lost it. Either the arrow dissipated too much, or the broadhead had too much resistance. Now, when we get into the broadhead side of it, number one, it's got to be razor sharp going in. We're really past razor sharp. I want it as sharp as possible. And people use that analogy, but really razors and even scalpels are on a lower grade steel than the broadhead we carry, which is iron wheel. Iron wheel is on an A2 level steel. So that hard a grade that's that sharp, and nobody's ever thought about or talked to me about, well, I have a razor sharp or a iron wheel sharp broadhead that goes in. How sharp is it when it comes out?
Absolutely.
So the better quality metal is going to ensure that we maintain that sharpness all the way through. When you start breaking down broadheads and you take one, and every time that somebody asks me about a particular broadhead, I can go back and look at the metallurgy when we tested them, tell you what the metal's made of. I can tell you how much most of them are made out of tin and pot metal. So that stuff may be able to be what I call a false sharpened, where it feels sharp, but as soon as it gets through the hide and hair, then it's dull. And now you're ripping and tearing instead of slicing. So if you want a true measure of a broadhead, you know, and when we're looking at sharpness, you look at how sharp is it entering, how sharp is it exiting. And there's nothing that I've seen other than iron wheel that's going to maintain that through an animal. Now, if we can control that arrow with the absorption rate to match, and then we have a broadhead that is unmatched on sharpness and durability, then that allows us to not have to wait on that broadside behind the shoulder.
Yeah.
I want to, if that animal gets in range, I don't care what angle he's at, I'm fixing to send one through him and I want him dying. And I don't want to track him. So I purposely will get in the shoulders, get in the front end, quarter and two a shot's my favorite. Because me personally, I've done that shot more than I can remember in the last several years, and I hadn't had an animal get out of sight. They're going to fall right there, and we're ensuring pass-throughs because of that broadhead arrow combination. So when you look at the reliability of that broadhead, then you look at the hardness of that steel. Well, let's match that to the arrow. If I'm going to have an A2 steel broadhead that is that sharp, then why would I put it on an arrow with aluminum components?
Yeah.
Kind of defeats the purpose, because now that becomes your weak point. So the components that I'm going to use to get that FOC, I'm going to ensure that the integrity of that's going to be steel, titanium, to where I'm not going to put something on the front of my arrow softer than that shoulder or that joint on the deer, because then I'm going to have a failure. And I've said it before, and me and you've talked about it, but I'm a firm believer that if you don't have a pass-through, you had an equipment failure at some point.
Yeah.
You didn't have enough energy to get through, whether that's off the bow, whether that's in the arrow dissipation, because of the absorption rate, or it's on an inferior broadhead. Now, when you get into those dynamics, though, it opens up a lot more doors. It opens up the doors of accuracy.
Yeah.
It opens up the doors of what is that balance to not give up the wrong trajectory. You know, because that does matter. But so many people get wrapped up in speed, and really and truly, speed it's something that I have to pay attention to, because all it is a metric for my formula, but it's nothing that's on the top. It's not there. Speed is not what's going to kill that animal.
Yeah.
Momentum is your true metric, and your momentum is the true measure of knowing that you've got enough energy being transferred to that arrow to get through that target. So, but it opens up a lot more doors to where you start thinking about, okay, well, for instance, we have a lot of people ask about broadhead tuning. We don't broadhead tune. We never have here. We never have to, because my field points and broadheads always hit exactly the same, because number one, we have a balanced broadhead that's going to match the weight, and then I make sure that arrow matches the absorption rate, so I don't have any dynamics of changing that. And I mean, more times than not, we have a bow that is set up perfect. We even have the right arrow, and somebody will choose to put a broadhead on other than iron wheel, and then they start having problems.
Yeah.
And especially in the mechanical world, because mechanical world, they say, well, I can put a mechanical, I'll get the same flight. Well, that's not always true, but even when it is true, you're giving up the energy that you're going to need to build the momentum to get through that animal, because of the energy that it takes for that broadhead to work. Not to mention that I've yet to see one that's made out of any kind of quality metal that's going to keep that integrity of sharpness out of the animal as way it was going inside the animal. So there's a lot of dynamics that door opens up on, but more times than not, I've seen it to where somebody will get right before season, they'll put their broadheads on, and they're not hitting in the same spot.
Yeah.
And then they come to me and say, hey, we got a broadhead tank. I was like, well, stop, back up. Well, if you're going to change your bow for a particular broadhead, when your bow is perfect and your arrow's perfect, that's kind of backwards to me. If the problem is in the broadhead, why change my bow? It doesn't make sense. I've got a perfect tuned bow. I've got a perfectly good arrow, and then I go and put a broadhead that changes everything, and I want to change what's working.
You want to match to the broadhead, not the bow.
Yes, yes.
Backwards.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's why over the years we've taken every broadhead that I can physically imagine. We've brought them in from other continents. We brought in every broadhead that I've ever seen, and we've run them through the gamut. We've tested them. And I've yet to see anything on that level. I've yet to see anything that'll be consistent between lighter energy setups and heavy energy setups.
Yeah.
I've yet to see one that are 100% balanced. We've had more times than not where we've had manufacturers build broadheads that are trying to make them all 100 grains. And how they get to that 100, who knows? The ferrules could be different weights, the blades could be different weights. So the consistency, the sharpness, the hardness, the durability, I mean, I don't know how you can beat it. I've yet to see anything like it.
And one thing I wanted to touch on was, and you've told me this in the past, is once it does pass through that deer, it hits something to stop. And I mean, you showed me an arrow, I think you said you shot 8 deer with. And you're not breaking the arrow, you're not breaking that broadhead, and so it goes into a quality setup of it's going to hit a tree, it's going to hit a rock, it's going to hit the ground after it passed through bone, flesh, the whole nine. And so if you put your time into that arrow,
absolutely,
it's an investment versus, snapping an arrow halfway through a deer at 20 yards, and then playing a game of chase for 200.
Yeah, I had a great example. I had a fellow here in the shop several weeks ago, and he bought 6 iron wheels from me back in like 2018, 2019. He does a lot of travel hunting. He's gone. I mean, and he come in, and I tell all my customers, as long as you don't lose them, you'll never have to buy another broadhead.
Yeah.
Literally, you don't. They're just reusing. They're not a one and done. So he made a good point that day that I've never thought of. But the only complaint that I've ever heard on iron wheel was the price. Well, he made a good point that kind of rebukes that. But it said he come in and he was getting arrows, he was getting a few things, and he opened up his bow case, and I seen his iron wheel case, and he opened them up, and I said, "How's your iron wheels doing?" He went, "Oh my gosh." He said, "I've got at least 40 kills on every one of them."
Wow.
Had 6 of them, and I said, "Wow, that's probably the most I've heard of."
Yeah.
And then he said, "That's the cheapest broadhead you'll ever buy."
Yeah.
And I thought, he's right, because with 40 kills on each broadhead, he's got less than $1 in every kill.
Reusability versus
I mean, you think about it, it's the cheapest. Just don't lose them.
Yeah.
And here at my shop, I believe in them so much that I'm going to guarantee them for life. So if you tear one up, which you're not, then we're gonna give you another one.
I remember I came in with kudu points, and you said put them in the trash.
Yeah, exactly. Throw them in the garbage can. That's what I tell everybody. Just throw them away and trust it. Trust the process. Trust the system. Because, number one, if we're going to spend the time and the money to build the perfect arrow, why would I put something on the front that's going to have more resistance to cut down the momentum that I just spent my time building?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me why some of these companies and some of these broadheads do what they do. It just rattles my brain, because the type of metal they're made out of, they're expecting them to be a one and done.
Yeah.
And a lot of these broadheads are $15 to $20 a piece in a 3 or 4 or 5 pack, whatever they come, and they're one and done. That just doesn't make sense to me.
That's how they build a repeat customer.
I guess, So, but yeah, the dynamics of matching this arrow and controlling that vertical variance, and then matching it to that bow is where we've kind of hung our hat on.
And one thing I kind of want to turn to here is accuracy. With these different components in the build, you're obviously going to see a benefit downrange. So what about the build, or how you build it, can lead to being a little bit more accurate? Because I mean, even for me at 50 yards, like this arrow build right here that you built for me is going to be a little bit more resistant to wind drift than my last arrow. Like I'm more consistent in those wide open range shots, being able to control it against the wind and some of these things.
Well, there's actually 2 aspects of that. One is on the accuracy side. The higher your FOC, the higher this number of weight we have on the front compared to the rest of the arrow, automatically is going to make your groups get tighter, period. So an FOC of 6, 7, 8, like most stock components with a 100 grain tip, your accuracy or your group size at a certain distance is going to get way smaller just by increasing that front weight. Now, everything's got a negative. So the negative to that is if we get too high, then we get into trajectory problems. We do lose speed, which it's not my top of the list, but I do have to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
We start losing that, and the accuracy trade-off is not worth it.
Yeah.
So the optimal for me on every arrow build I do is 16.3 to 16.8. I've got a 0.5% window that I can hit. Now, if I go above that, it's going to shorten my range of where that effective energy starts dropping off.
Yeah.
Okay. If I go below it, then I lose accuracy. I lose that dynamic of we're extending that distance. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that is that balance point. Now, you hear, if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, man, all I'm gonna do is shoot hogs at 15, 20 yards," well, then I'll build you a 22%, 700 grain arrow. You'll blow through every one you shoot through.
Absolutely.
But you don't want to try to shoot that arrow at 30, 40, 50 that looks like a rainbow.
Yeah.
Because that does matter to a whitetail elk hunter or somebody.
Absolutely.
That may want to extend their range a little more. So there's a specific dynamic that we have to match that build, according to what our distance is going to be, and then, build it backwards basically. Now, on this end of the arrow, the accuracy side of it is going to be, and you'll notice we've got a pretty aggressive fletching on here.
Absolutely.
The reason I do this is twofold. One is with a smaller diameter shaft like you have here, like in a 4 mil or a 166, this fletching is going to help spin that arrow faster. So when these arrows come off the bow, and they're going to go left because that's what every bow wants except for one type of string, this fletching is going to speed that process up. So the faster I can turn this shaft, and it's kind of like pushing an accelerator, the further it goes, the faster it's going to go.
Yeah.
Now, what we're going to have to be careful of is two things. One is that we don't spin it so fast that we spin it out of the weight of the arrow.
Okay.
So then you'll get a parachute effect.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen that with the FOC numbers that we do. And with what I call a balanced arrow. So a balanced arrow, in my opinion, 16 to 16 and a half, mid 16 FOC with a moderate GPI. And then on the back, this fletching type, these Plastic Fletch 26 that I run, have the lightest vane weight at this kind of drag or surface area that I found. So, and that's another reason that you'll never see me building 4-fletch, is because 4-fletch in a hunting configuration is going to create too much drag and it's weight on the wrong end of the arrow.
Okay.
So if I were to go to a 4-fletch and I add on another 7 or 8, I've got to go 40 more up here to offset that. Then my overall arrow weight gets up and I have trajectory problems.
Absolutely.
So
okay.
I mean,
yeah.
So even down to the wraps we use, these wraps I'm very particular. These here weigh less than 2 grains, and the thickness and the diameter, we have precisely built them to where I'm not putting that much weight on the back end on the wrong end. So the dynamic of that on the accuracy side, more is on that is on the FOC build, because the higher that is, the more accurate you're going to be. But two is we got it balanced to keep that arrow at a weight that's going to still shoot flat, but it's going to spin accordingly, but it's not going to get your weight up to where your trajectory is bad.
With these arrow setups, I know in the past you've told me the importance of marrying the setup to the bow, which is going to help with that retention of energy.
Yep.
So what about the way you tune the bow to the arrow or the arrow to the bow is unique or makes it so lethal?
So when you get to the bow, which is our energy source, I want to be able to maximize what that bow can do at a certain draw length and poundage. Now, let's say, for instance, we have a common 70-pound 29, which really, I have more 60, 65-pound guys now because of the arrows have made up that kind of difference.
That's about right,
that we're dropping pound. I see it every day. I'm doing more 60, 65-pound setups now to where I used to do more 70, 75s because of our arrow changes.
Yeah.
So if we have for instance, 28 and a half, 65 is pretty popular. All right, if that bow is perfectly tuned, if our rest is exactly zeroed out like it's supposed to, that means that when that bow is fired, and also the bow's in time, that means that everything is working from top to bottom uniformly, equally, to put that energy into the not just in the knock, but in the middle of the knock.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime that bow is off, let's say that for instance, we have somebody that wants to shoot an inferior broadhead and they kick their rest to try to broadhead tune, then you're changing how that energy transfers in.
Okay. Yeah.
If your bow's not in time, you're changing how that energy transfers in. So for me, I'm going to zero that bow out, and I'm going to make sure that the bow is absolutely tuned perfect to where that energy is going in here. Now, for me to know the bow is perfect, the arrow is going to be my measure of the feedback. So we zero the rest, we make sure it's in time, and I shoot the arrow through paper. And if we get a tear, like a left or right tear, instead of kicking the rest, which is the cheating way or the easy way, I'm not doing that. But my rest is perfect. It's zeroed out on the bow. I'm going to move the cam and the string. So I'm going to use the top hat system, or in the new Lift X, we're going to use the limb shift technology to where I'm going to shift that limb and cam, not limb, I'm going to shift that cam and string to get it to where it's matched to the dead center of the arrow. So we're maximizing that energy. Now, you may think, well, I can move it just 2 clicks here, 2 clicks there. We tested it, and it can be a change up to 1.5 to 2 foot-pounds of energy, because you can think about it. If we just move that rest a little, and that energy goes into this arrow at an uneven rate left to right, what you're relying on now is that arrow coming off here. Even though we may get a good tear, you've got to make that up somewhere. And what it's going to do is it's going to rely on your fletching to correct it. Okay, what's happening? You're eating energy. Eating energy. So why do that when I can tune the bow to the rest, the bow to the arrow, and I get it all efficiency, dead center, left and right. And I don't have that loss. So everything that I do, the numbers I have for every bow and every setup, as far as draw length and poundage, is based on a perfect alignment. And if I don't have that perfect alignment, then this arrow's got to correct it. Now, let's take that even fast forward. Let's say that we have an arrow that is not weighted properly, that is too light, that is either under spine or over spine. Then what's going to happen is that effect of going in is going to graduate even more. It's going to take even longer to fix the fletching, fix it, and you're losing that much more energy. So it all works together. All of this system works together. And if you break one piece of the system, then you're going to pay for it somewhere else. Remember this in the archery world. You're never going to gain anything in any dynamic without giving it up somewhere else. Period. I don't care. If you want to gain speed, you're going to give up some accuracy. You're going to give up some energy. If you want to gain momentum, and you may give up some trajectory. You know, you got to think about a balance. It's all about a balance. But all of that is based on the bow being perfectly to transfer that energy evenly into the center point of the arrow.
Absolutely. Well, Kenny, if someone watching this does want arrows or a bow from you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
We do have a Facebook page, TopFlight Archery, and all my information's on there. You can give me a call, text me. My number's on there. It's 731-616-7848. That's the shop number. You can cell number. You can get me there anytime. So text me, call me. Be glad to help you. I help guys on the phone all the time.
Absolutely.
They call all over the country, and I'll walk them through their arrow build, so it's not exclusively that you have to come here. And also, we ship arrows daily. We ship arrows everywhere. So we've got boxes out here now. I think they're going to 5 or 6 different
states.
It's
a storm out there. Boxes everywhere.
We ship arrows. We build them, ship them daily. So as long as I know the bow, I know your draw length and your poundage, then we can build an arrow to match it. So.
Absolutely. And I know you stand behind them. You've told me plenty of stories. Someone calling you, putting you to the test, and eating their words after the fact.
I want you to test them. I've got enough confidence in these setups that I want you to compare it. I want you to compare it to what you had. I want you to compare it to what you even thought about doing in the future. Compare them. I want you to run it, because even if we find something better, I want to learn. So I'm never going to say, I'm not able to learn anything else, because somebody may hit on something that I don't know about, and I'm all about learning. So if we see anything that's different, I'm open to trying it, testing it. And that's what over the last 7, 8 years, that's what we've done, is we've took every aspect of this and I've tested it. I'm not basing all this just on my opinion. I'm basing it on facts. I'm basing it on tests that we've done. I'm basing it on running everything through the gamut to see what's the best is. And I don't know about you, but when I go out there to hunt, I want to make sure that I've got the most efficient, lethal machine in my hand that's going to get the job done. And the last thing I want is that deer to walk off because he didn't present me with a perfect broadside shot and stand there still. If he comes in there quartering, if he comes in there facing, I want him in the truck.
Yeah.
So I want an arrow that's going to be like a 300 Win Mag and put him on the ground.
You don't want to be worried about your setup hanging in the tree.
No, absolutely not. So it's going to give me confidence. It's going to
absolutely.
That confidence is 95% of being a bow hunter anyway.
Absolutely.
So I can't tell you how many animals the first 20-something years of my bow hunting career that I let walk off thinking that they had to be broadside and standing there still. And the last 20 years I've made up for it. Because now if he gets in range, I'm getting an arrow in him. I'm getting an arrow through him.
Through him, yeah, absolutely.
So I hadn't seen anything better. But I'm open to learn if somebody, shows me something different, but I hadn't seen it yet.
Oh, I'm sure somebody will have something to say.
That's fine. Hey, I'm open. I've got a lot of experience, but I'm never too old to learn. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate Kenny. I'll put your Facebook, your phone number anyway. Somebody can reach you in the comments, and I appreciate you sitting down and giving us an insight into how you do what you do.
No problem, man. Thank you, and I appreciate you coming up and seeing me.
Always. Hey, y'all. Thanks for watching the video. If you would, like, comment, share. Go over to Facebook, check out Kenny's pages. I've linked them down below. He really does make some killer arrow and bow setups. Look forward to the next one.